She said no? Said she wasn't ready for a baby. But the vitamins, the appointments, the ultrasound, everything pointed to yes. Just not with me. And when I thought I finally knew whose child it was, something arrived that changed everything. I found them by accident. The vitamins, I mean. We shared a medicine cabinet, loosely. Her things had slowly expanded into mine, like ivy over stone. I was looking for ibuprofen. Behind her half-empty migraine pills and a long-forgotten bottle of lavender oil sat the prenatal vitamins, nearly full. Not the generic kind either. The kind with branding that promised optimal development, in calm, clinical font. My first thought wasn't betrayal. It was confusion. We'd had the talk several times. I was ready. More than ready. There was a steadiness in me about it, a quiet conviction I didn't shout about. I'd taken a job closer to home, turned down a promotion that would have doubled my travel. I'd even moved my workouts earlier in the morning so I'd be home for dinner, imagining someday there'd be someone small at that table watching how we treated each other. But she said she needed time. That she wasn't where she wanted to be professionally, that the thought of motherhood made her chest tighten, not with joy, but anxiety. She said it like a confession, not a rejection, and I believed her, because I loved her. So I waited. I didn't push. I told myself love meant patience, that building a life sometimes required deferring dreams. It hurt, but it also felt like the right kind of hurt, the noble kind. Then I found the ultrasound. It was tucked inside her nightstand, folded neatly between two notebooks. There were 2 copies. The black and white image wasn't labeled. No name. No date. Just the familiar grainy silhouette, unmistakable in its shape. I stared at it for a full minute before the floor under me shifted. 2 copies. That was what my mind couldn't release. One to keep, one to give. Not to me. That night at dinner, she told me a story about her coworker's new apartment. Something about open floor plans and French doors. I watched her mouth move and nodded in the right places, but my stomach was lead. She smiled like everything was fine. Like we were fine. And I remembered, clearer than I should have, a night last fall, lying on our old couch with her head in my lap. We'd been watching reruns of an old sitcom, some throwaway joke about fatherhood, and she looked up at me and whispered, "You'd be the kind of dad who builds tree houses." It had stunned me. Not just the sentiment, but the timing. We'd been distant then. That comment felt like a hand reaching across a canyon. I held on to it like a promise, built quiet dreams around it. Now, with the vitamins and the ultrasound and her too easy smile, I felt that same canyon stretch wider, not emptiness this time, but something poisonous filling the gap. That night I couldn't sleep. I watched her breathe beside me and wondered if she was dreaming of someone else. Wondered what had changed. Wondered when. The next morning, I opened her laptop while she was in the shower. My hands didn't shake, they should have. But suspicion is like adrenaline, it narrows your focus. I didn't look for messages. I went to her browser history. OBGYN searches. 3 different clinics. One stood out, a private women's health center about 40 minutes away. She'd been there more than once, according to the history. Recent visits. I copied the number down. Later that day, I stepped into a quiet conference room at work and dialed, putting on my most casual, practiced tone. "Hi, I'm just confirming an appointment for my wife. She mentioned seeing Dr. Connors again next week, but I forgot the time." There was a brief hold. Then a voice, warm and professional. "Yes, she's scheduled for Thursday at 11 a.m. We have her down for her regular prenatal check-in." Prenatal. Regular. I thanked her. Hung up. Stared out the window for a long time. Outside, people moved through their lives. Lattes, text messages. No one knew the ground had just shifted beneath me. I'd wanted to be a father. Genuinely. I was ready. But I never thought I'd have to be a detective first. That evening she was radiant. Not unusually so, but in a way that stung once you knew where to look. She wore the navy sweater I bought her last Christmas, the one she'd called the softest thing ever, and made mushroom risotto from scratch. No occasion. No ask, just her, humming in the kitchen while Miles Davis played low from her phone. "Long day?" she asked, handing me a glass of wine. I nodded, afraid my voice would betray me. We sat on the couch after dinner, the familiar kind of quiet between 2 people who've stopped needing to fill every silence. I watched her legs tucked under her hand tracing circles on the wineglass stem. She leaned into my shoulder. "You ever think about names again? It felt like a test. For what? I asked, tone measured. She smiled, looking at me from under her lashes. You know. For a maybe someday. I forced a chuckle. You mean, for the thing we're not ready for yet? She nodded, feigning embarrassment. Yeah, that. I asked her then, gently, if she'd ever surprise me with something like that. If she'd ever keep it to herself, just to plan the moment right. Her answer was too quick. Of course not. You'd be the first to know. She curled into me after that. We watched a movie. She dozed off somewhere around the second act, and I just sat there, watching the way her chest rose and fell, trying to connect the version of her on this couch with the one who had an appointment for a prenatal checkup this Thursday at 11 a.m. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed and walked down to the garage. Not to leave, not to run. I just needed a space that wasn't ours. I sat in the car, hands on the wheel, headlights off. That image, the ultrasound, flickered behind my eyes like a ghost trapped in film. It wasn't just that she was pregnant. It was the story behind it. The world she was building without me, and the realization that whatever future I'd been helping to shape, it didn't have a place for me. I'd spent the past year preparing my life for something that was never coming. Made compromises I didn't resent because I thought they were mutual. Gave her space, gave her time, gave her grace. And now there was someone else in the picture. Someone getting the version of her who smiled when she said, someday. When I returned upstairs, she was asleep. I stood there for a moment, watching the curve of her back, the arm outstretched into my half of the bed. The deception wasn't loud or clumsy. It lived in the tiny gaps, in what she didn't say, in the time she disappeared for errands, in the way she'd stopped leaving her phone face up. That was the moment the switch flipped. Not rage, I wasn't there yet. Just cold clarity. She lied to me. And not just about being ready. About everything that readiness implied. The next morning, I ordered a GPS tracker. Small, discreet. Tucked easily into the rear panel of her car. I installed it under the pretense of upgrading the vehicle's security. Told her about a rash of break-ins in the area. She thanked me for thinking ahead. That Thursday, she left the house at 10:15. The tracker pinged her at 10:56, parked outside the clinic. She stayed there until 12:24, then drove home. That evening, she mentioned traffic, asked if I could pick up her dry cleaning the next day, kissed me goodnight, and fell asleep with her hand resting gently on my chest. I stared at the ceiling, eyes wide. It's surreal, the way deceit can wear a face you've kissed 100 times, a voice you've laughed with, a hand that's held yours in hospital waiting rooms and Thanksgiving dinners. And yet here it was, the performance, the slow, careful erasure of our shared narrative, one Thursday at a time. I started keeping a private log. Thursday, 10:56 a.m., check-in. 12:24 p.m., exit. Friday, normal behavior. No signs of tension. Saturday, dinner with friends. She laughed at everything. The following week, it happened again. Clinic. Same time. Same duration. But this time, she didn't come straight home. The tracker showed a detour. Westbound, 15 minutes. A parking lot near a quiet commercial complex. An hour there. I checked her phone that night. No messages, no photos. Location history scrubbed clean. I retrieved the receipt from her glove box the next morning. It was from the clinic. Line item. Prenatal screening panel. Date stamped. 3 days ago. The case was building itself now. Methodical. Surgical. Not just suspicion, proof. And yet, every night she smiled like she was building a life with me. She was. It just wasn't mine. I didn't confront her. That would have been too easy, and too soon. I needed more than instinct and scraps. I needed the full blueprint. There's a difference between being angry and being strategic. Anger wants to throw things. Strategy waits for the walls to rot from within and collapse on their own. I called in a favor. An old friend of mine, Eric, worked in private security. We'd done volunteer work together years back, bonded over bourbon and mutual distrust of easy explanations. I told him I needed eyes on a location and discretion was non-negotiable. He asked one question. Is it her? I didn't answer. That was enough. Within 3 days I had a small manila envelope on my doorstep. Inside were photos. Crisp, clean, time-stamped. Her walking out of the clinic, hair pulled into a tight bun, wearing the scarf I got her in Santa Fe. She didn't look scared. She didn't even look guarded. Just calm. Like she belonged there. In the second photo, a black Lexus idled at the curb. She climbed into the passenger seat. The timestamp showed 12:26 p.m., just after her appointment. Next to arrive in the packet was the man, mid-40s. Expensive taste in watches. Sunglasses that probably cost more than my car insurance. I studied the photos like a silent film, flipping through them over and over. And then I stopped. Photo number 7. It was a brochure in the background, on the building behind them. I recognized the font first, then the name. My stomach dropped. Dr. Alan Keats, LMFT, her therapist. I'd seen that name before. On the little paper bag she once brought home after a session, the one with tissues and tea packets, a grounding kit he gave her when things got tough. She showed it to me proudly, said he. Really saw her. I remembered shaking that man's hand once, 6 months ago. She had begged me to go with her to a session, just once. I agreed, even though it felt invasive, vulnerable in a way I didn't like. We sat in that softly lit office while she talked about feeling disconnected, pressured, like she was losing herself in the idea of who she was supposed to be. I listened. I took notes. I answered honestly when asked. The therapist had nodded at me, said I was a grounded presence. Now he was the one picking her up after prenatal visits. I wanted to punch something, but what would that change? I needed to know more. I dug back through my email, found the session reminder she'd forwarded me that time we went together, from his official office email. Cross-referenced it with the clinic address from the GPS logs. Different buildings, same suburb, 3 blocks apart, and always Thursdays. That weekend I pretended everything was fine. We had brunch with friends. She held my hand under the table. She laughed at the waiter's jokes. No one saw the rot. That Sunday night, as she folded laundry, I asked her how therapy was going. Just a soft question, tossed out like a pebble. She shrugged. We're taking a break. I'm in a good place. I nodded, said nothing. The following Thursday, I tracked her again. Clinic at 11 o'clock. Lexus at 12:30. But instead of heading west like before, they drove north, to a hotel just off the interstate. I marked the timestamp. 1 hour and 42 minutes inside. That night, she kissed me like nothing had changed. It was almost beautiful, in a sociopathic way. I called Eric again. Told him to run a financial background on the man. 2 days later, I had more than I wanted. Alan Keats had a private account, not associated with the practice, receiving regular deposits. Small, consistent, spaced apart just enough to look innocuous. One of them matched a withdrawal from our joint account almost exactly. $5,000, transferred 6 weeks ago. I checked our banking app. She had listed it as professional coaching. I remembered that day. She told me she needed to invest in herself again. That therapy was a lifeline. I supported it. I told her, use what you need. She had. I copied everything. Photos, transaction logs, location pings. I didn't organize them yet. I wasn't ready to put the pieces into a final shape. Not yet. But the story was becoming clearer. The man she'd called her guide was the one steering her out of our life. The therapist who helped her find herself had also helped her misplace me. She said we weren't ready, but I think she just didn't want me in the picture anymore. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't scream. It whispers. It speaks in receipts and detours, in quiet changes to routine. It lives in the absences of explanations, of eye contact, of shared dreams. It never announces itself outright. It waits until you start reading the margins. The story she told me was one of overwhelm, of needing time, of not being emotionally ready to build a family. But the second story, the real one, was unfolding in Thursdays and hotel check-ins. I still hadn't confronted her. That wasn't the play. Not yet. Not until I could strip every excuse from the board and leave her with nothing but truth. But I wanted to know one thing. When did it start? I booked a session with Dr. Alan Keats. Not as myself. As a prospective client. A man struggling with relational boundaries. The receptionist slotted me in for a Tuesday morning. I wore a different coat. No wedding ring. He didn't recognize me. That told me a lot. I sat across from him in that same softly lit room where I'd once confessed to him, with her in the seat beside me, my fear of becoming invisible in our marriage. Now I watched him, took in the practiced empathy, the calculated pauses. He was good, too good. He asked me how long I'd felt uncertain about my relationship. I answered carefully, masking the venom. About 6 months, I said. Something shifted. I think she needed something I wasn't giving her. And I think someone else stepped in. His eyes flicked, just for a second. He nodded slowly. That's a very difficult experience. It's brave to explore that. Brave. That was the word he used. Like I was scaling Everest, not crawling through the wreckage he helped create. I let the silence stretch. I've been doing everything right, I said. Made compromises. Showed up. Let her take the time she said she needed. I didn't push. He nodded again, encouraging. And then I found out she was pregnant, and I'm not the father. His mouth opened slightly, just a flicker. Then the professional mask dropped back into place. I'm so sorry to hear that. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was watching. You learn a lot from what someone doesn't say. And what he didn't say was denial. He didn't ask who I was. Didn't even blink when I stood up, shook his hand, and said, "Thank you, Dr. Keats. You've given me what I needed." He never reported the session. Never called me back. Never followed up. That silence was its own kind of confession. I took the information and went quiet. I built a folder. Digital. Encrypted. Photos. Bank transfers. GPS logs. A copy of the ultrasound. Screenshots of her browser history. A copy of the clinic receipt. I named it Second Story. I kept living our life like nothing was wrong. We went to a party that weekend. She wore a green dress I hadn't seen before. I watched as she leaned into a conversation with one of our old friends, hand on his forearm, laughing a little too hard. She was electric, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. I could see why he'd fall for her. I just didn't expect her to fall back. That night, we came home, tipsy, warm. She pulled me into bed and curled against me. I held her. I didn't touch her out of affection. I was tracing the outline of a life that was ending. That next Thursday, she left again. Clinic, Lexus, hotel. Check. I stayed home, organizing files. Around 2 p.m., I got a text from her. Need anything from the store? I stared at it for a long time. The banality of it. The casualness. I replied, "No, I'm good. Thanks." That evening, she came home with a bag of groceries anyway. She made soup. Talked about her day like she hadn't spent half of it with another man. I ate quietly. Memorized every word. I now knew the when, the who, the how. But not the why. And the truth is, I didn't need it. The facts were a scaffold. The confrontation was coming. And when it did, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd raise the truth. The night before I confronted her, we had tacos. She made them, her specialty, spicy shrimp with lime crema and cilantro slaw. We ate on the patio, string lights glowing overhead like stars that had agreed to come closer just for us. It was a good night. That's what made it worse. How normal it was. How practiced she'd become at moving through a lie without a limp. She laughed when I teased her about forgetting the hot sauce, called me dramatic, leaned over the table to kiss my cheek. Her lips lingered. I almost said it then, almost ruined the illusion, but I waited. Because I wanted her to have one more night in the world she thought was still intact. The next morning, I set everything out like a prosecutor preparing for trial. 2 folders, one digital, one printed. Timeline. Photos. Financials. GPS data. Screenshots. Receipts. I waited until after breakfast. She was sitting on the couch, legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone like any other day. I sat across from her. Calm. Steady. Folder in hand. "Can we talk for a minute?" I asked. She glanced up, caught something in my tone. Her smile dimmed. "Of course. What's up?" I didn't answer. I just handed her the folder. She took it slowly, like it might burn. Opened it. The ultrasound photo sat on top. I watched her face. No reaction. Not shock. Not even fear. Just the slow recalibration of someone running options. She lifted the photo. Beneath it, the bank transfer, the hotel records, the GPS logs, a photo of her getting into the Lexus. Still, she said nothing. Finally, I spoke. "You said we weren't ready? That you needed time." She opened her mouth, closed it, looked down again. "Was it ever true?" I asked. Silence. Then a soft, rehearsed sigh. "It's complicated." "No, it's not," I said. "It's Thursday, clinic at 11, hotel by 1, home by 3, grocery store text at 2. That's not complicated. That's scheduled." She swallowed hard. "I didn't plan for it to go this way. That's the part you're going with." I raised an eyebrow. "The I tripped and fell into another man's Lexus explanation?" Her voice cracked then. It wasn't like that, wasn't it? She stood, pacing now, trying to find the right spin. I was confused. Therapy blurred some lines. I didn't mean for it to become physical. I smiled, not kindly. Which part was the accident? The hotel reservation? The prenatal checkup? The $5,000 transfer to his private account? She froze, eyes wide. You thought I wouldn't notice? That I'd just sit here and keep being the man who bought groceries and waited for a future that didn't have my name on it? She tried to cry, reached for tears that wouldn't come fast enough. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. But you did. Methodically, repeatedly. Her shoulders slumped. It got out of control. No, I said. You were in control the whole time. You just thought I wouldn't catch up. She looked down, whispered. He said he cared about me. I bet he did, I said. Therapists usually do. Right until the moment it's unethical. Or illegal. She flinched. And then the final card. You know he wouldn't testify for you, right? Her head snapped up, confusion breaking across her face like waves. The alimony claim. He'd have to admit under oath that the relationship started during therapy. He won't. That man's got a license to protect. Her face broke, not in tears, but in realization. She knew I'd won. I stood, collected the folder, and said quietly, I'll be out by tonight. My lawyer will contact yours. As I turned to leave, she said the last thing she'd say to me for a long time. Did you ever love me? I paused at the door, thought about the treehouse comment, the couch, the wine, the Sunday mornings with her hair a mess and no makeup on. Thought about all the small, beautiful things that had meant everything to me and clearly nothing to her. I still do, I said, but not enough to stay. I moved out that night. 2 suitcases, my laptop, a leather duffel with essentials. The rest I left behind, not out of grace, but indifference. Objects were the least of what had been stolen. She stood in the kitchen while I packed. Didn't say a word. Just watched. Maybe she thought silence was some kind of penance. Or maybe she was still calculating, waiting to see what angle she could still work. The next morning, my attorney served the separation notice. She responded 2 days later with a motion for temporary alimony. Emotional distress. Loss of financial security. I didn't flinch. I'd seen it coming. We'd been equal earners. No dependents. No medical hardship. Her case was weak, but not hopeless. She claimed our split was sudden. Said I left her without explanation. The therapist, unsurprisingly, was omitted from her version of events. That's when I released the folder. Not to her, to my attorney, and through him, to the court. Her strategy cracked on impact. But damage isn't just legal. It's social. Friends began to split into camps. She got to a few of them first. Told them I'd walked out after she shared unexpected news. Played the role of abandoned partner with enough fragility to make it believable. One friend, someone I'd known for over a decade, sent me a one-line message. If this is how you handle surprise, I'm not sure I ever knew you. I never responded. Another friend, couple friends actually, stayed neutral. Too neutral. Invited her to a birthday dinner I was already attending, said they. Didn't want to take sides. That night she wore the same dress from our last vacation and smiled like nothing had happened. I left halfway through dessert. The house sale dragged. She delayed paperwork citing emotional duress. My attorney filed a motion to force the sale. The judge agreed. Market was strong. The offer we accepted was $20,000 above asking. She texted me late that night. You'll regret not fighting for this. I didn't reply. Because she was wrong. I had fought. Just not for the house. I fought for the truth. For the dignity she discarded. For the version of myself that had believed in something real. In the weeks that followed, I moved into a short-term rental. Then a high-rise condo downtown. Sparse, modern, quiet. No shared closets. No echo of her laugh in the halls. Just glass, clean lines, and silence. At night, I walked along the river. Watched the city lights blur against the water. Let the motion remind me that everything flows away eventually, if you let it. I kept the ultrasound. Not in a frame. In a drawer. Beneath some old letters. I didn't look at it. But I didn't destroy it either. It wasn't nostalgia. It was insurance. Memory. Proof. There was a weight to carrying the truth, but there was also clarity. I could finally stop asking questions that had already been answered. And yet, pain doesn't obey paperwork. It lingers. Every time I saw someone cradle a bump in public, I felt something hollow press behind my ribs. Every commercial about new beginnings sounded like a dare. The future I'd planned had been stolen, not just erased, but rewritten, and mailed to another address. Still, I rebuilt. Routines. Solitude. Order. I started waking up before dawn again. Not to make space for anyone else's schedule, just mine. Sunrise became a ritual. Coffee, notebook, silence. The kind you could breathe in without choking. And every now and then I imagined her Thursday drives, wondered what silence she sat in now, whether it echoed, like mine had. But I didn't miss her. Not anymore. Just the life I thought we were building. 6 months passed. The divorce was finalized. She fought hard for alimony, claimed emotional abandonment, said I'd weaponized my resources. But when it came time for court, the man who might have saved her claim didn't show. Her therapist lover refused to testify. His affidavit said the relationship began after their professional engagement concluded. She swore it had started later too. The court didn't believe either of them. That, in the end, was the most honest sentence handed down. They were both liars, but for different reasons. I sold the house we shared. The buyers were a young couple expecting their first. I handed them the keys without ceremony, then drove away without checking the rearview. My new place was steel and glass and silence, a high-rise unit facing the river, floor-to-ceiling windows. No shared corners, no haunted rooms. I filled it with only what I needed, a desk, a couch, a bed, and books. I kept the lighting soft, and the calendar empty. There were no echoes here, just space. I got used to walking before sunrise, headphones off, letting the city breathe around me without commentary. Sometimes I passed by playgrounds or cafes she once mentioned wanting to visit. I didn't turn away. I let them pass through me. Then came the letter. Plain envelope. No return address. Postmarked from the same suburb where the clinic stood. No handwriting. Just a neatly typed single sheet, centered text. He's not mine either. No salutation. No signature. Just those 4 words, clean and clinical. I read it once, folded it slowly, set it on the windowsill beside the ultrasound I kept in the drawer. Not out of sentiment, I'd long since lost that, but out of strategy, out of memory, out of proof. She never followed up. I never asked. I never learned if the note was from him, or from her, or from someone else entirely. I never tried to trace it. The point wasn't the sender. The point was the echo. Even their betrayal wasn't whole. Even their future had fractures. Some days the silence still hurt, but at least it was honest now. I didn't fill it with stories. I didn't pretend. I let it echo and named what I heard. I kept journaling. Every page began the same way. Don't look away from the truth. It never blinks. That phrase came from her, once. A line she'd read aloud from some book during one of her anxious spirals. Back then, she said it like a mantra. Like armor. Now I say it too, not to protect myself, but to remember how quickly armor becomes disguise.